Imagine discovering a JRPG series with 10 main games spanning almost 40 years and wondering why almost nobody talks about it. That's exactly what happened to me with the Ys series. While franchises like Final Fantasy or Dragon Quest dominate the conversation, Ys has remained surprisingly overlooked. A while ago, I decided to play every modern entry in the series, and what started as simple curiosity became one of my favorite JRPG journeys. So today, I'd like to explain what makes these games so special and, as a bonus, rank every main entry from worst to best. Ys is a long-running action JRPG developed by Nihon Falcom. It's an action game because combat happens entirely in real time, making it fast, fluid, and increasingly spectacular in the later games. Alongside the action, you level up, discover stronger equipment, unlock new abilities, and, most importantly, experience a brand new adventure with every game. Some stories are classic tales of heroes saving kingdoms from ancient evils. Others explore much deeper themes about human nature, sacrifice, power, and the choices people make. The story quality varies from game to game, but every entry has its own charm. The series began in 1987 and now consists of 10 main entries. The story timeline can be a little confusing because Falcom remade several of the older games years later, while some newer titles actually tell earlier stories. My advice is simple. Just play them in release order and don't worry about the timeline. There's only one caveat. Ys 1 and 2 should always be played together because they're one continuous story split across two games. Aside from those two, every game tells a self-contained story, so you can jump into almost any entry without feeling lost. At the heart of every game is Adol Kristen, a young adventurer who leaves his homeland at just 17 years old to explore the world. Adol is the classic silent protagonist. He rarely speaks, yet his kindness, courage, and endless curiosity make him surprisingly easy to connect with. He's constantly drawn toward forgotten ruins, mysterious islands, cursed kingdoms, and ancient civilizations, usually finding trouble wherever he goes. Like any great RPG hero, every adventure begins with Adol almost powerless. By the end, he's wielding legendary weapons and defeating gods or godlike beings. It's become something of a running joke among fans that somehow, between every game, he loses all his equipment and has to start from scratch again. Yes, these are familiar RPG tropes, but Ys embraces them so well that you don't mind the story inconsistency. On the contrary, with every new adventure, you're excited to discover what powers you will unlock, what mysteries you'll uncover, and just how high the stakes would eventually become. As the series evolved, so did its storytelling. The earliest games are relatively straightforward adventures, but the later entries spend much more time developing their worlds and supporting characters. By the end of many games, it's surprisingly easy to become attached to the people traveling alongside Adol. There's also something bittersweet about every ending. No matter how close Adol grows to the people he meets, he never stays. His destiny is always the same, to continue his journey toward the next unknown horizon. Gameplay has evolved considerably over the decades. The earliest games were simple top-down action RPGs. Later entries introduced an isometric perspective with light platforming, before eventually transitioning into fully 3D worlds with party-based combat, crafting, cooking, fishing, and plenty of optional activities. Despite all these changes, the heart of the series has remained remarkably consistent. Combat is always fast, responsive, and satisfying, while exploration constantly rewards curiosity with hidden equipment, powerful artifacts, or simply beautiful locations that make wandering off the main path worthwhile. And finally, we have the soundtrack. From the very first game, the music of Ys has consistently been exceptional. During combat, energetic rock-inspired tracks push the action forward with incredible momentum. During quieter moments, the music becomes more melancholic and reflective, perfectly matching the emotional tone of the story. It's one of those rare soundtracks that stays with you long after you finish playing, and one of the biggest reasons these games have remained so memorable to me. Now let's get to the fun part, the tier list. My final grade for each game is simply the average between two categories, story and gameplay. And don't worry, there won't be any story spoilers. Ys 1 and 2. Since Ys 1 and 2 tell one continuous story, I'm treating them as a single game. The story is simple but effective. An ancient evil threatens the land, and Adol answers the call. The adventure feels epic from beginning to end. The finale also provides a satisfying sense of closure. Story: A. Gameplay is much more divisive because of the famous bump system. Instead of pressing a button to attack, you damage enemies simply by running into them, but only from an angle. It feels awkward at first, although after a while, it becomes surprisingly natural. My biggest criticism instead is related to the final section of Ys 2, which turns into a huge maze full of backtracking, dead ends, and occasionally unclear objectives. Gameplay B. Final score A. E6, The Arc of Napishtim. The story has interesting ideas but uneven execution. Several characters never become as important as they initially seem, while the main villain arrives with very little build-up. Story C. Gameplay switches from top-down to isometric 2.5D perspective. The bump system thankfully is gone, and now Adal attacks with a button press. It's a solid foundation, but platforming feels imprecise and the overall controls still need refinement. Gameplay C. Final score C. Ys, The Oath in Felghana. The story is enjoyable but fairly predictable, with a few underdeveloped characters and an obvious plot twist. Story B. Gameplay improves on E6, but still suffers from awkward platforming and frustrating flying enemies that don't work particularly well with the 2.5D perspective. Gameplay C. Final score B. Ys Origin. Origin is the only main game without Adal, taking place centuries before Ys 1 and 2. It works brilliantly as a prequel, expanding the world's lore while telling an emotional story through 3 different playable characters. Each one reveals important pieces of the puzzle, making them essential to play if you want to fully understand the evil Adal will one day face. Story S. Gameplay represents the absolute peak of the isometric era. Combat is fast, controls are responsive, and the dungeon-focused level design suits the engine perfectly. Gameplay A. Final score S. Ys 7. Ys 7 marks a turning point for the series. The story places much greater emphasis on world building and supporting characters, making the adventure feel richer than previous entries. NPCs feel more alive with their personalities, motivations, and their own little arcs. Story A. Gameplay makes the leap into full 3D and introduces party members that you can switch between instantly during combat. It's an excellent foundation, although both combat and the dodging mechanic still feel somewhat rough compared to later games. Gameplay C. Final score B. Ys Memories of Cel Seta. The story is ambitious and engaging, but repeats one of E6's biggest weaknesses. The main antagonist doesn't receive enough development, making the ending less impactful than it should have been. Story B. Gameplay is noticeably smoother than 7, especially thanks to improved dodging. My only complaint is that each companion is tied to specific exploration abilities, forcing unnecessary and repeated character swapping. Gameplay B. Final score B. Ys 8 Lacrimosa of Dana. For me, this is where Falcom truly found its stride. The story starts quietly before building into one of the most emotional finales in the entire series. If you don't shed a tear by the time the credits roll, it means you're dead inside, I'm afraid. As a side note, Lacrimosa literally means tearful in Italian. Just saying. Story S. Gameplay also improves across the board. Parrying joins dodging, combat feels fantastic, and the additional side activities, crafting, cooking, fishing, help make the island, where the story takes place, feel alive without becoming distracting. Gameplay A. Final score S. Ys 9 Monstrum Nox. After Ys 8, expectations were incredibly high, yet Ys 9 still delivers another excellent story. I don't think it reaches the same emotional highs as Lacrimosa of Dana, but it's still gripping from beginning to end. Story A. Gameplay is where it truly excels. Traversal is simply fantastic, almost reminding me of Rocksteady's Batman games as you glide, climb, and leap across rooftops. Falcom also removed the forced companion switching from Cel Seta by making the exploration abilities of each character available to the whole group. Great choice. Gameplay S. Final score S. Ys 10 Nordics. Ys 10 comes surprisingly close to matching the quality of its predecessor. The story eventually delivers a powerful emotional payoff, although it spends perhaps too long teasing mysteries, with characters forcefully withholding information from the player till the very late phases of the game. Story A. gameplay introduces naval exploration and a new duo combat system. Both are enjoyable additions, although the naval combat becomes a little repetitive over time. My biggest issue, however, is that the powerful duo attacks tend to overshadow the regular combat, making encounters feel less varied and reducing the need to engage with the game's full combat system. Traversal also feels like a step back after Ys 9's incredible freedom. Gameplay, A. Final score, A. And that's my complete Ys tier list. Do you agree with these rankings? Did I underestimate or overrate any of these games? Let me know in the comments. And if you've never played a Ys game before, I genuinely hope this video has convinced you to give the series a chance. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.